Hey, Pastor Josh here. We're reading Genesis chapter 39, verses 1 through 9. We've come back now to the story of Joseph. Chapter 38 takes a break and looks at Judah, emphasizing the separation of Judah from the family, the trouble that he gets into, and then the very fact that through some immoral means, God is still preserving the seed from which King David will come and then Jesus will come. That seed, that person that will ultimately crush the head of Satan. And so now we come back to the Joseph story. And the Joseph story is important because Joseph is going to be the very tool by which God uses to preserve and save and protect the nation of Israel. So let us look at that. 39. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt. Going to Egypt is usually downward. It's usually not a good thing to go to Egypt. This is not the first time the patriarchs have found themselves in Egypt. Abraham found himself in Egypt, and Isaac found himself in Egypt. Joseph is now in Egypt, and at the end of the Genesis account, Jacob and the entire nation of Israel will find themselves in Egypt. Egypt is usually not the place you want to go. It is outside the promised land. And of course, for the Israelites, Egypt is the ultimate symbol of slavery, the ultimate symbol of bondage, the ultimate symbol of the place that is outside God's blessing. But Joseph goes down to Egypt, and when he is there, Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, this is a fairly important person. Notice the clarification here is that he is an Egyptian. He had brought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and that is an attitude we need to adopt for ourselves as children of God. The Lord is always with us. The Lord will never leave us nor forsake us, no matter where we may go, no matter where we may find ourselves. The Lord is with us, and the Lord is with Joseph there in Egypt. So the Lord was with Joseph. And what happened because the Lord was with Joseph? He became successful. He became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. So as he's serving this man named Potiphar, this captain of the guard, this officer of Pharaoh, this important man, as he was there, he became successful. And his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord caused all he did to succeed. So Potiphar kind of perks up. He pays attention and says, you know what? When Joseph is about my business, when I put him in charge of this or ask him to do it, it seems to go very, very well. The master saw that the Lord was with him. And so here's a testimony to the power of the Lord. He is recognizing this man is special. This man is an Israelite. He's a Hebrew. He is not from here. And he is wondering what it is that's bringing success to him. So because of this, then, Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. So Potiphar said, well, he's so good, I'm going to put him over more. And Joseph found favor in his sight. We need to recognize that when we do a good job, when we get promoted, when we find ourselves with more responsibility, when people think favorably about us or they ask us to do something, we need to recognize that all of that is from the Lord. You cannot do a good job. I cannot do a good job apart from the Lord's empowering strength. We find favor in people's sight. We find success only because of the pure mercy and grace of the Lord. And the quicker we come back to that truth, the better off we are. Because we will get our bellies will get all tied up in knots as we try to do things the right way, the correct way. And we should make sure we're doing it the right way as far as the Lord's way. But we try to control circumstances. Well, we need to just rest in the fact that Any prosperity and any success we have is ultimately from the Lord, and it will be His hand that brings that about. Verse 5. So let's see what else. Joseph's now in charge of everything under Potiphar's house. From the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. Another attitude for us to adopt. The Lord blesses other people through us. The Lord wants to make us a blessing. And we don't need to be so selfish to try to keep things for ourselves, to keep our skills to ourselves. We want to bless the people around us. And we see then, because Joseph is doing a good job, then the person that he is serving is being blessed. And may we be that way as good workers, the people that we work for, or perhaps the people that we serve. They need to be blessed because of our hard work and our dedication to what the Lord has called us to do. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had. Everything got touched with the blessings of the Lord in house and field. Everything. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So Joseph's working very well, and he's in charge of everything. Doesn't this kind of sound like Jacob? Isn't that exactly what happened to Jacob when he was working for Laban? He was extremely successful. The scripture doesn't spend a lot of real estate in the text talking about Isaac, but the same thing happens with Isaac. Isaac especially is prosperous as he is digging his wells. And so this is the Lord blessing and showing his favor to his people. Now, Joseph was handsome, so not only was he really a good worker and a successful worker, he was also good looking. He was good looking in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph. Well, that's not going to be a good thing. She is envious and she is desiring of Joseph. And here's what she said. She said, "Lie with me." But he refused. Now notice, remember, this is coming right after chapter 38. And what was the issue in chapter 38? It was a lot of sexual immorality, all the way to the sons of Judah committing sexual immorality with Tamar, and then ultimately Judah doing the same thing, all this sexual immorality. And this is contrasted to Joseph, who's going to resist this. So he refused. And of course, this is an example for us to follow, is to refuse temptation, and in particular, in this case, to refuse sexual temptation. There are all kinds of sexual sins that a person could be tempted to do, and we should refuse all of them. God has a particular plan for sex, and we need to follow what he has commanded and directed, and we know within that you will find blessings. So Joseph refused, and he said to his master's wife, "Lady, behold, because of me my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" He said, "I'm not going to do it. I'm in charge of everything. I'm pretty much as great as he is. I have access to everything he has." This is how much Potiphar trusted Joseph, because he showed himself to be a good and godly man. But there is the key at the end of verse 9. Here is how he resisted. It's because he realized not that it would hurt his status with him, even though he did kind of mention that a little bit, but the foundational thing that kept him from sinning is that he realized it would be a sin against God. And ultimately, as we live our life, we need to follow this same example. We need to realize that we do things because God commands us to do it. And that's it. We want to honor God and let the consequences or the blessings be as they are. We're going to follow God and do what he tells us to do. And the things we don't do because God has told us not to do it. And we leave the consequences and the blessings up to God, and circumstances. If God tells us not to do it, we won't do it. If He tells us to do it, we do it. Now, it is a little bit difficult to kind of figure out exactly what is God telling us to do and what does He not tell us to do. But that should ultimately be our goal in life. We do not want to sin against God. And that kind of attitude will keep us from all kinds of tricky temptations, tricky traps that will ultimately take us down a dark and terrible road. And may God keep us from making those terrible choices. I pray that has been a blessing to you, and I'll see you all in the next video.